Trade Union Federation, SAFTU, wants the Department of Labour to formally recognize taxi operators and associations as employers. This follows a meeting with KwaZulu-Natal-based Cleaner National Public Transport Workers Association. The unions held a press briefing earlier today to highlight the plight of workers in the taxi industry. General Secretary Zwelinzima Vavi joins us now for more on what transpired today. Thank you so much for making time for us, Mr. Vavi. What challenges have you picked up as unions in the taxi industry? What's affecting the workers?
Well, 3 decades now down the line, the taxi operators, the taxi workers, the drivers, the marshals, the administrative staff, all support staff have been operating outside the framework of the Constitution and outside the framework of the labor legislation in our country. 3 decades down the line. And there has been no attempt to rope them inside the legal framework of the Constitution that stipulates very that workers ought to be registered. They ought to have deductions such as the UIF, and they ought to have other benefits such as being covered by the Occupational Health and Safety Act or by the Skills Development Act. They're just operating outside. They have no pay slip. They have no overtime regulations in terms of their working hours. They have absolutely no medical aid, no housing, nothing. And the Kinamshaili have been trying their best to go knock at the doors of the Department of Employment and Labour, Department of Transport. They ended up being registered as the NPO under the Department of Social Development. This is wrong. In our view, there can be no doubt of the fact that the taxi drivers are the employees as defined by the by the Labor Relations Act, Section 200, that they are employees who must have all of the benefits of the employee accruing from the Constitution of the country.
Mm-hmm. So some may argue that what we have seen government do is talk about the formalization of the sector for the longest time, but then you see departments that are also passing the buck. So whose responsibility is it exactly? Is this something that falls under the Department of Transport, or is it more on the side of the employment and labor?
It is employment and labor, first and foremost. Remember, the taxi operators are themselves employers, and they are involved in the activity of trade as defined in the Constitution. And through that trade, they rely on workers selling labor to themselves. And for them to generate profit and other benefits as the employer. The Department of Employment and Labor, working with the Department of Transport, should have long registered these workers as workers. The operators as the employers. And so that as part of its regulation of the taxi industry, it can say, firstly, you have to be registered as the employers, and secondly, the people you employ have to be registered as employees so that the other benefits accruing to both them as the employers and the employees can begin to flow. And the reason now is that the reason why we've not moved is that the department is hesitant, both departments for that matter.
Yeah.
One of the reasons is that we demand that once these operators are registered, one of the principal fair things to do at this stage is to make sure that they receive a subsidy, same like Gauteng and the private bus services are receiving a subsidy. There will be no reason to exclude them from that benefit because they are already transporting almost 80% of all workers to their workplaces and from their workplaces. They're getting no subsidy. They are not being regulated, and some of them pay some taxes. Most of them pay no taxes, and government is keeping an arm's length from that industry, and yet it is such a crucial industry, employing 500,000. One estimate say that it generates up to 90 billion rands every year. So it's not some small fish and chips operation that you can ignore. It has to be roped into the benefit of being the employer, and the employees must then get their UIF and must get all of the other benefits that all other workers in the country are getting.
So if the department does recognize taxi drivers, the administrators, queue marshals, as well as staff members in the taxi industry as workers, what bigger difference do you think we will see here for the workers, so far apart from the benefits that will come, whether it's with UIF and the other benefits that come with that? Do you think we're likely to see many of these workers not being prone to exploitative and abusive working conditions like we've previously seen?
Absolutely. If you register the operators as the employers, the operators will be obliged first to register their employees, and the employees will then have to get all the benefits, including being protected not only by the Labour Relations Act, but also by the Basic Conditions of Employment Act that regulate the working hours, regulate the maternity benefits, the leave benefits, the overtime benefits, and all of those benefits that are accruing from the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. It will then force the taxi operators to negotiate with their own workers on such things as regulating working time in the taxi industry. For example, it is unavoidable that if you move from Gauteng to Cape Town, you're bound to spend 14 hours on the road or 15 hours on the road. If you come back and you go from Johannesburg to Durban or to Polokwane, this is bound to have major impact on the number of hours, just like a truck driver. But in the trucking industry, there is a deal to say if you work this number of days, you are entitled to rest over this period to compensate the fact that you were on the road for so long. But you can't negotiate now because there is no recognized agency such as the Employer Association as the employer, not just something to collect levies from other members of the Employers Association, but also as an agency that will negotiate with its own employees. So there's going to be major benefits. May we just say this, Clement? We have given the department up to Tuesday, the 4th of July, to come back to us and to tell us whether they will start registering all of the taxi operators as the employers so that the employees can be registered the next. If they don't do that, we are preparing, in fact, we have already lined up advocates to take the case straight to the Labour Court, and we are prepared to work with anybody that is going to oppose that all the way to the Constitutional Court, and anybody, by the way, who will take a chance can, because there will be no court in this country that will not recognize that the taxi drivers are the employees and therefore must be protected like all other employees. In the same way, we are taking the government to court as well for exploiting the workers employed by the EPWP program, the Extended Public Works Program, because that program, designed initially as a training 3 months program, has now become a permanent employment relationship where workers were employed as way back as 2009 remain in the program. And we argue as SAFTU that, hold on, an expectation have been correctly and arisen, and these workers are demanding that they be employed permanently because clearly they are doing a permanent job that used to be done through the local government workers are currently being done through the EPWP. So both the issue of the taxi drivers and the EPWP, we are going to take this to the government slowly and to court and all the way to the Constitutional Court. And we want to give a guarantee to every worker in the taxi industry and in the EPWP that we will win.
Are you exploring options around taking to the streets as well, perhaps strike action if indeed the minister doesn't liaise with the Department of Transport and they respond to your letter, or do you want to see this one play out in the courts first?
We will do both. In fact, we had a meeting with the Mshayeli this morning after the press conference. We're now charting a way of ensuring that they get registered as the union. Because remember, the previous frustration was that they ended up being an NPO because the Department of Employment and Labour would not play the ball. But now we're starting a process. We're going to help them go to the Congress with the Constitution, the new leadership, their joining forms, and their offices. And once we have done that, we will go back to the Department of Employment whilst we are taking them to court at the same time. Whatever comes first, we will take.
All right. Zwelinzima Vavi, General Secretary for SAFTU, thank you for making time for us.